Listen, if I had to carry around my cat in apocalypse of sound-seeking killer aliens, we'd be dead in 5 seconds. Quiet Place Day 1 is directed by Michael Sarnowski and stars Lupita N'Yongo, Alex Wolff, and Joseph Quinn. It's the spin-off prequel to the first movie in the Quiet Place franchise that released back in 2018. In my trailer talk video, I discussed how much I enjoy the movie itself and the viewing experience, as much of the tension relies on the silence of the movie and the theater. Though I will take this time to note how unfortunately there was someone loudly whispering throughout the movie, which at times killed some of the suspense and a lot of the tension. This person started talking because the main character, Sam, takes her cat with her once New York starts falling apart. Now listen, talking during a movie is one thing, but talking during A Quiet Place, and because of a cat?
Ha! You will burn in hell when I'm through with you!
When everyone did get with the program, however, one jump scare in particular was so effective that a person in the row behind me dropped their hydro flask, and everyone heard it and immediately started laughing. It was a very memorable experience. That being said, this movie is a great time, even if it wasn't quite what I was expecting, and that's a good thing. To begin with, Lupita N'Yongo does a great job. She proves herself as a lead actress once again, just as she did in Jordan Peele's Us, except she plays a very different character here. For once, it's the beginning of a movie that is held secret by its trailers, which instantly made me more engaged and interested to see how her character reacts. Before we even get to the actual arrival of the Death Angels, thank you, Michael, for informing me, even though Miss N'Yongo herself did not realize the name of these creatures, in a short amount of time, we learn a lot about the character she plays, named Sam. She has a very sarcastic attitude, she is determined to go get a slice of pizza, specifically deep in the city, and she has an adorable cat named Frodo. Frodo is played by the gorgeous Schnitzel, and another cat listed in the credits as Nico, who I'm assuming is her stunt double. Together, Sam and Frodo, wait a minute, begin to venture out in the depths of downtown New York. That's where the chaos ensues, and a lot of what we see from the trailers. Honestly, I was surprised after watching it that at 99 minutes, a majority of what was shown in the trailers is only in the first half hour. I have been seeing a lot of people say they wish there was more of the figuring out of the Death Angels, or more on the actual fallout, but I think what we're shown works well enough, and it's pretty basic knowledge that you shouldn't make a lot of noise when in the presence of dangerous creatures, here on Earth or otherwise. So I don't feel it was necessary for them to go, oh, sound attracts them. It's like, well, yeah, sound would, and they are more sensitive to sound. Sometime later, Sam is separated from the person she was originally holed up with, and it's none other than Frodo that actually introduces us to a very sweaty and scared Joseph Quinn, who plays a man named Eric. It should be noted I have not seen Stranger Things Season 4, I haven't had Netflix for a couple years now, so I couldn't really comment on his acting before this movie, but for what he's given here, he does a great job as well, particularly a standout moment in the end where he acts without any dialogue, whispered or signed, in one of the more emotionally gripping scenes. I'm sure that he'll be a great Johnny Storm in the upcoming Fantastic Four set in the MCU. The survival of Sam, Frodo, and Eric and how it plays out is the rest of the movie, and I think that's a very endearing adventure. What works about the first Quiet Place is that we are focused on a family that has been surviving this invasion for at least a year, and we learn the rules that they follow and about the world they're in throughout. Part 2 follows the family further now that they know a way to stun and in turn harm the creatures, but there's also the inclusion of other groups, factions, and a lot more dialogue that's outright spoken than in the first one, because of some locations they believe are safe. This is a bit startling when what made part 1 work so well is the lack of dialogue. Here we take a step back, being day 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and not every character is fully adjusted to being totally silent. Characters talk or communicate under fountains, under tarps in the rain, or have to wait until a thunderstorm to perform actions that make sound, such as kicking down a door. This makes for a very compelling watch and really puts into perspective just exactly how much sound we make in our everyday lives. opening cat food, opening doors, walking along the sidewalk, the list goes on. It's through these actions like these that our characters learn to silence themselves, or just outright find alternatives. Another aspect that I enjoyed, and what I didn't expect, goes into a character's backstory, at least with their family. Without getting into spoilers, we find the reasons behind Sam's strong desire to go so deep into downtown New York and get something seemingly trivial to the viewer for a majority of the runtime, the slice of pizza. But once her and Eric share a bond and survive together, she trusts him enough to tell him, and we, the general audience, learn with him. It's something so mundane, but also weirdly specific for something in my family, specifically my grandfather. And at the moment that Sam shares what that place and what that slice of pizza means to her, I instantly got choked up. It's the simple things we don't really think about until they're gone, or that we can no longer experience. And I think Day One does a great job of showing that. In my own opinion, I think this is a piece of post-COVID lockdown fiction that can serve as a great allegory for the early stages of the pandemic. A Quiet Place Part 2 was originally supposed to release on March 20th, 2020, which is the absolute worst timing for a big budget movie release in retrospect, as that's when the initially 2-week lockdown was announced. Watching it a year later when it finally released, I couldn't help but see some parallels with what I was personally experiencing, mainly the idea that the world I lived in was no longer the same. Obviously this was not intentional, as then writer and director John Krasinski did not know what was going to happen, but it does help the idea of loss and adapting, especially to those who've watched the first Quiet Place, know how it ends, and how Part 2 picks up from there. Day One feels almost intentional, or a lot easier to look at as a piece of post-lockdown fiction that's not too on the nose or as a direct comparison. And I like that it can be viewed in that lens that I personally will choose to, or not. And either way, it was more than a tent horror sci-fi, but a survival story that works on multiple levels. All in all, I really enjoyed A Quiet Place Day One, and I'm glad I saw it in theaters with my good friend Justin, who is a bigger fan of these than I am. And we saw it in IMAX, as there are quite a few thrilling sequences and landscape shots of before and after the Death Angels come that show, not just tell, the audience what kind of world we're living in. I'm going to give A Quiet Place Day One an 8 out of 10. I sat with this movie, and the more I thought about it, the more I enjoyed and appreciated it. There are elements like symbolism and plot points I can see just not working for people, the notion of a noiseless cat included, but that's a personal preference, and I really appreciate the big swing this movie took in terms of narrative direction. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about from the opening scene. The only spoiler-adjacent thing I will say is that, yes, dear viewer, the cat does in fact survive. Now I understand what dog people feel like in any movie where there's a dog. Y'all are some brave folk. Thank you so much for watching, and before you head out, like, subscribe, and tell me, what did you think of A Quiet Place Day One if you've seen it, or what's your favorite sci-fi, thriller, or horror movie? Also, what else do you want me to review? Do you like these current reviews, or would you listen to me talk about any movie? Quite a few blockbusters either have or have had anniversaries already this year, and I'll definitely be talking about some of those, but I can surmise that most people might want to hear about current movies, as they'll know either to wait till it hits streaming to see it, or $5 Tuesday, or even opening day. Thank you again, and I'll see you all same Zach time, same Zach channel. Have a good one.